December 6th, 1959, 2475 Glendower Place, Los Feliz, California. L.A. doctor Harold Perelson strikes his wife in the head with a ball-peen hammer while she sleeps, murdering her before attempting to do the same to his daughter. When he fails to kill his firstborn, he commits suicide. But why would the so-called successful father of three living in a ritzy area of L.A. want to kill his wife and daughter? And why, 63 years later, has no one officially lived in the home since? This is the mystery of the Los Feliz Murder Mansion. Hey, y'all, I'm Chris Calvert.
And I'm her husband, Rob Pottorff. Welcome to Hitched to Homicide.
For better or worse.
Till death do us part.
Welcome back, everybody.
Yes, welcome. And for our Welsh friends, you ready for this?
I'm almost afraid.
Croeso. And I'm sure that's just a terrible pronunciation, but that's for all of our Welsh friends.
Well, way to go. I think the new King Charles III would be proud of you.
Yeah, well, and a lot of my ancestry comes from the Welsh, so it's apropos for me anyway.
There you go.
All right.
You did a good job. Somebody will email us.
Yeah, of course. I'll get slammed.
Somebody's
on that one.
always emailing me.
Yeah. How's come you botched up our language, man?
Well, wherever you're listening, be sure to like, rate, and review the podcast. That helps other people to find us.
Yep.
We love our reviewers. You guys are amazing. Thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to do that. And if you haven't done it yet, go in and do that.
Yep.
It is October. It's cold outside. I've already said it's sweater weather. I'm wearing another sweater today. I've got our dinner in the crock pot cooking upstairs. We had to cover all of our flowers because it got below freezing.
Yeah, I like to watch on our patio. We have a TV out there, and I like to watch Monday Night Football or Sunday Night Football. And I went out there last night, and I had to put a blanket on. And even before we got to halftime, I'm like, okay, this isn't worth it. So I had to come inside. It was chilly.
Yeah, well, he was out there alone, by the way. I was not out there.
Yeah.
I'm not braving the cold. I'll do it in the summertime, but not
me and Scotty.
Not when it's that cold. But because it is October, I'm a huge horror movie fan.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have horror movie recommendations, please drop them in the In-Laws and Outlaws. I love people to give me suggestions, especially if you know if it's on, the Hulu or Netflix or HBO or whatever, or even if it's not, let me know. I will post some of my favorites in there too in the In-Laws and Outlaws. And if you're not a member of that group, go join that now. All you have to do is go to Facebook and look for H2H or Hitched to Homicide, In-Laws and Outlaws.
Yep.
Answer a couple questions and you're in. It's my favorite place to be online. Everybody in there is amazing.
Cool.
But I wanted to pick another October case that's kind of got a weird twist to it. So I chose
none of
this
the
one.
others had any weird twist to it. This is something new for us.
Okay. Well, I'm going to thank some sources before we take off on this wild ride.
All right.
The New York Post, The Hollywood Reporter, Medium.com, MyLABucketList.com, The LA Times, The Pasadena Independent, The Valley Times, The Daily News Post, and the Los Feliz Murder Mansion podcast. And I believe it's a 7-part podcast. It's done by Cloudy Day Pictures. I listened to just a little bit of it, not all, but it's really, really good. So if you want to hear a deep dive of this true crime, I highly recommend it. And of course, I will have a link to all of those, including the podcast, in the show notes.
Cool. Well, let's do it.
Harold Nathan Perelson is born on February 1st, 1909, in New York to Henry and Molly Kodak Perelson. His father was a Jewish printer's clerk who left his native Poland, packed up, and came to America. His mother was actually Russian. And when they landed in New York City, these two set up housekeeping in the borough of Queens on Pitkin Avenue.
Okay.
Harold will be the first of 4 children born in the United States. Now, Harold's a smart kid, and he does really well in school, so much so that he goes on to medical school.
Nice.
And after med school, he packs up and moves to the West Coast and Southern California, where he takes a job at a doctor's office in Inglewood, California. He's going to publish some papers on neurology and later become a cardiology professor at USC School of Medicine.
So he loaded up the truck and moved to Beverly.
He did. That's exactly what he did. That was good, honey.
Thank you.
Really good.
I was waiting for you to pause so I could throw that in there.
Now, you might think it's odd that he's publishing papers in neurology and teaching cardiology. Like, I even wrote in my notes, pick one. So I did a little bit of digging, and residency wasn't the only option for all medical school graduates back then. They took different pathways to becoming doctors, including apprenticeships or studying outside the country. So back then, you maybe did 1 year of residency or what's called an internship, and then you were ready to take the medical license exam. It's not until the late 40s and 50s that you had to do a real residency program to specialize.
Wow, that's kind of scary.
It is a little bit scary. It's kind of like trial by fire. Like you come out and say, hey, I'm going to be a surgeon.
Yeah. You never want to hear your surgeon say, oops.
Right. Well, I think, I want to be a surgeon, so you go apprentice with one, and then a year later, poof, you're a surgeon.
Yeah.
But not at all like today's residency programs. And I believe I read that Johns Hopkins was the first hospital and medical school that set up the structure of residencies.
Oh, wow.
I think. I believe that's what I read. I would have to double check that, but in my notes, I kind of wrote that in there. So that's probably right.
We'll have to ask our next door neighbor. He went to Johns Hopkins.
There you go.
Yeah.
But Harold was more than a medical practitioner. He was also an inventor. And on December 30th, 1938, that's my birthday. Harold filed, not 1938. Let me back that up. Just December 30th, not 1938. Oh, good Lord.
You teed that one up.
I did. I look like I was born in 1938.
No, you don't.
Yeah, I know.
You
what
look
can
like
I
you
say?
were born in 1988.
Oh, he's winning some points. He's trying hard, y'all.
I'm trying the best I can.
But on December 30th, 1938, Harold filed for a patent for a medical device. It was his own invention, and on March 25th, 1941, he's granted the patent for a, quote, attachment to hypodermic syringe for injecting drugs from ampules, end quote.
Okay.
So apparently it was supposed to reduce the danger of contamination because remember back then syringes were glass and not disposable plastic. And needles weren't disposable either because my mother was a medical technician and phlebotomist in the early 60s, and she's talked about how she used to have to sharpen her own needles.
What?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
I had no idea.
So hold that thought. But he's going to come up with something that prevents contamination that allows the ampules of medicine or drugs to attach to the syringe.
Okay.
I will post a picture of this patent that is granted because there is a blueprint, and I do have a picture of it. I'll post it.
All right.
Harold married Lillian Silver. She, too, was a second-generation Jewish immigrant from Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio. Together, they have 3 children, Judye, Debbie, and Joel. I'm not going to talk very much about Harold's children. These 3 have really stayed out of the spotlight. I'm going to try to respect that.
Okay.
But during this time, Harold works on his medical syringe design for 10 years.
Wow.
And after developing it in 1949, he enters into a verbal agreement with a man named Edward Shustak. And old Ed is going to promise to make this medical device a big hit, and he's going to ready the product for the medical market.
So was he in the medical field or he was just a shyster?
I think he was a shyster,
There you
but
go.
I don't know.
All right.
But Shustak would spend the next 11 years trying to develop the syringe, but apparently he had zero intention of giving Dr. Perelson any of the credit or any of the proceeds.
Wow.
Now, I don't know if Shustak actually got any money for this device.
Right.
I just don't know.
Okay.
Meanwhile, Harold and Lillian are living the dream. He's making lots of money, or is he? That's called foreshadowing. And there it is.
I told you I'd
It's
find one.
official.
Yeah, exactly. We have the dun-dun-duns.
But he's a doctor, he's teaching, and it was time for them to purchase their dream home. And they do. 2475 Glendower Place, Los Feliz, California, a property that sat at the foot of Griffith Park at the eastern end of the Santa Monica Mountains and is located between Hollywood and Silver Lake.
Okay.
Now, this is a really well-known neighborhood. Frank Lloyd Wright designed the Ennis home that sat at 2607 Glendower Avenue, and Rob's going to love this, because this house was used as the exterior of the 1959 horror film The House on Haunted Hill starring Vincent Price.
Oh, wow.
Which isn't about a haunted house at all, but a serial killer.
Oh, yeah. Well, and the reason I know this film is because I'm a big fan of Mystery Science Theater 3000 and Rip Tracks. And this is one of the movies that Rip Track just completely destroys. It's pretty awesome.
This is why Rob and I have separate Netflix accounts.
It's really good. But yeah, he's a serial killer.
Yeah, but that really weird house that they used is in this area.
Wow.
And other celebrities who've lived in this area include Katy Perry, Angelina Jolie, Cecil B. DeMille, Kristen Bell, John Hamm, Eva Mendes, Colin Farrell, Zac Efron, Chris Pine, Alexander Skarsgård. I was picking all the hot men who live in the area.
So it's a low-rent district.
Yeah, it's a coveted area, very pricey, and the area is also very steep and very hilly.
Yeah.
Now, Harold pays $60,000 for the Spanish Revival-style home. Wow. I heard another price tag as well, but $60,000 I think is what he paid for the house.
And what year was this?
1956.
Okay.
He pays $60,000. It was originally designed in 1925 for Harry F. Schumacher, who was a produce magnate, by Harry Wiener.
Oh, no, that is not his name. How unfortunate.
Everybody calls him Harry Wiener. He's got a middle initial. I left that out. But then I read in the notes from the 7-part podcast that his name was actually Harry Werner. And all the publications have been getting this wrong for years. Every single newspaper article called him Harry Wiener.
Yeah, did they get it wrong or did they just do it on purpose?
No, I think it was just sort of a typo and then it stuck. You know, you use one source and then that person uses that source. And for years, he was just
Harry Wiener.
Which was really unfortunate. Can you imagine being Harry Werner and going, no, that's not my name?
I am not the Harry Wiener.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, a house this old has probably had somebody die inside, right?
Right.
Harry and his wife both die in the home about a month apart in 1928. There was nothing hinky going on. They both died of natural causes and or conditions. Mm-hmm. And when Harry dies, because his wife dies first, his brother tried to get someone to buy the house, but no dice.
Yeah.
And they have a series of renters. So in 1929, the home is leased to Frederick Zelnick. And if that name sounds familiar, it's because he was a movie producer.
Yep.
And Frederick lived in the house with his silent movie star wife, Lia Mara.
Okay.
And they are there from 1929 to 1930. Then a film critic, Welford Beaton, and his wife move in. They too are only leasing the space. It's Welford, his wife Sarah, and their son Donald. And Donald will also die there at the age of 21 after he's been sick for 4 years after he gets a blister from playing tennis.
Wow. I've gotten blisters playing tennis and I've never gotten sick.
Yeah. So that sounds like, an infected blister. That sounds like MRSA or something that they didn't know how to treat, right? Yep. Then in July of 1931, they move out and British actor George Arliss moves in and he also rents the home. And it's said that he walked the 6 miles every day from the house to Warner Brothers Studios.
Oh, wow.
6 miles there and 6 miles home.
Good for him.
In May of 1932, he moves out, and it's bought 2 months later in June by John Stauffer Jr. John and his wife Beverly and their son Jack will live at 2475 Glendower Place. They live there without any problems.
Okay.
And then they donate the house to Whittier College, and they leave it. Then finally in 1956, Harold buys the 12-room home with terraced lawns, artistic gardens, and a magnificent view. This is the description of the property.
Okay.
There was a big tiled entrance hall and a magnificent stairway. The home had a spacious living room, a glass conservatory, a dining room, den, breakfast room, and kitchen. On the second floor, there were 4 bedrooms and 3 baths. And on the third floor was a ballroom with a bar.
Oh, wow.
There are also staff quarters, but the Perelsons never had anybody live in. So Harold moves the whole family in, and apparently this home has a spectacular view of the Los Angeles Basin and the Palos Verdes Peninsula.
Wow.
He paid $30,000, which in today's money is $326,659.
Wow.
Now, there was one source that said that he paid $60,000 for the house. So whether he paid 60 or 30 is, I don't know.
Yeah.
Now, while all of this is happening, Harold is still working with Edward Shoestack. But it's not going well, and Harold files a complaint on July 21st, 1952, claiming that Shoestack used a fake name and took away his rights to the device. He said that he was double-crossed. He sued, and he demanded compensation of $100,000, which is more than $1 million today. The case was drawn out forever. So I guess even legal cases back then took...
Yeah.
years and years.
Yeah.
And after 2 years of fighting and meeting attorneys and paying attorneys, the court gave Harold only $23,956, which would be a little over $250,000 today.
Which I'm sure he spent almost all of that on lawyers' fees.
Yeah. I mean, that was just a bad proposition all the way around.
Yeah.
On top of that, Harold and Lillian spent $24,496 of their own money to get the project ready for market, or so they thought, and $7,000 of that came from Lillian's savings. Now, 3 years later, on October 3rd, 1957, oldest daughter Judye was driving her brother and sister around in her dad's 52 Oldsmobile. When she crossed the intersection of Vermont and Los Feliz Boulevard, she hits another car. Now, apparently, Judye suffered hand and knee injuries, had a concussion, and suffered from severe shock. Her little brother Joel had a head injury and also had severe shock to the nervous system. And her little sister Deborah's cheek was sliced open. The other driver's name was Eleanor Keller, and she claimed that Judye, who was only 16 at the time, ran a red light. But Harold is going to take Eleanor to court and claim that Eleanor's carelessness and negligence was the reason for the crash. And Harold wants $20,000 in damages for each daughter and a further $10,000 for his son.
Wow.
He won the court case, but instead of awarding him $50,000, the court awarded him just a little bit of what he was asking for, and it was only enough to cover the medical bills. And just after this, Lillian's sister Gertrude petitioned to take over as the trustee for the children's compensation payments from the car accident. So they got a little bit of money. It was paid out in the children's names. And the Aunt Gertrude, Lillian's sister, is like, okay, I'm stepping in because I only want this money to go to the kids.
Right.
Judye was a graduate of Barrister High School in 1958. She was a member of the Girls League, and she was secretary of the student body. She was also an usherette at the Huntington Hartford Theater on Hollywood and Vine, which was a very fancy theater.
Okay.
And Judye, like myself, apparently loved shoes. She loved to go shoe shopping. But that's not all that's happening. You know, she's graduated school. He's had this lawsuit with his former partner, Ed.
Right.
And then he's suing this woman for this car accident. And he's just losing money hand over fist.
Right.
And in the middle of all of this, Harold thinks it's a good idea to buy his medical practice partner out. And it's not a good idea. He doesn't have the money to do this.
Okay.
But they draw up a contract. They do it anyway. And now on top of paying the mortgage on his house, now he's got to pay for this new practice. He's got installment payments to pay for this new practice. And he's got his children who are in school. And he has to pay his attorneys for all these lawsuits. Harold is drowning.
Yeah.
He is in over his head.
He's a little upside down right at the moment.
So as 1959 came about, Harold was feeling pretty low. He'd lost both of those court cases, or even if he won, he didn't win very much money.
Right.
And the family is in a bit of financial crises. And their splendid house in Los Feliz is too much house for Harold to handle financially. Like, this dude is drowning.
Right.
And Harold has been hospitalized for, quote, coronary episodes, end quote. That's also called foreshadowing.
Uh-oh. One more.
And things were so bad that Judye wrote a letter to her Aunt Gertrude, the same woman who petitioned to have the kids' payout go through her.
Right.
She writes a letter to her Aunt Gertrude in late 1959 saying, quote, "My family and I are on the merry-go-round again. Same problems, same worries, only tenfold. My parents, so to speak, are in a bind financially," end quote. But at the same time, Harold just bought Judye a brand new sports car. It was a little convertible MG.
Wow.
So they're spending money even though they don't have money.
Yeah.
So is it a keeping up with the Joneses? Is it a, keep things, the appearance of a doctor living in this really ritzy area? It's all about appearances, not about what's going on behind the scenes.
Right.
Then on December 6th, 1959, around 4:30 in the morning, 50-year-old Harold does the unthinkable. Wife Lillian and his children are asleep on the second floor of the home. Harold stands over her bed with a ball-peen hammer in his hand.
No.
Now, I've had this thing since my kids were little, and they would wake up and just come stand by the side of the bed, and then I would wake up and do the thing, like they're about to give me a heart attack, just standing in the dark, standing over me. And it's like it's a real fear for me to wake up and see somebody standing over me. And he is standing over her bed with a ball-peen hammer.
Wow.
Now, Lillian is fast asleep, and so she never knows what's about to come, because it's at that moment while she's sleeping that Harold strikes her so hard in the back of the head that he leaves a gaping inch-wide hole.
Wow.
Lillian will not die from the blow, but will drown in her own blood. Then Harold turns calmly and walks out of the bedroom. He opens the door to the master bathroom. He passes through another door that would lead to Judye's room. He stands over her bed, and he lifts the hammer, ready to end Judye's life too. But Judye wakes up and sees what's happening, and her father's hands and his shoulder were covered in blood. His whole right side is just basically covered in blood.
Wow.
He hits her in the head, but it's a glancing blow because she can kind of see what's happening, and so she moves.
Right.
But he still manages to hit her, and she's bleeding profusely. Judye lets out a blood-curdling scream that is so loud that the neighbors can hear it. And so do her little brother and sister. And Judye's father, Harold, says to her, quote, "Lay still and keep quiet," end quote.
Wow.
And he's very calm the whole time this is happening. It's like a horror movie, right?
Yeah, right.
Judye screams at him, quote, "Don't kill me," end quote. She's begging her father not to kill her.
Wow.
Then Judye escapes her room and runs to her mother, I'm sure for protection from her father.
Right.
So she's going in to be like, "Mom, Dad's lost his mind." But when she runs into the room, that's when she sees her mother. So she runs down the hallway and down the spiral staircase and out the front door, and she starts banging on the door of her neighbors. And she's bleeding profusely, right?
Wow.
She goes to the Lewis's home first, but nobody comes to the door. And then she bangs on the door of the Ross family, and it's Marshall Ross who opened the door, and together they call the police. Meanwhile, inside the Perelson home, the two other children are still there, and they've heard the screams. And when 11-year-old Debbie gets out of bed and sees her father covered in blood, he says to her, quote, "Go back to bed, baby. This is a nightmare," end quote.
Oh, jeez.
And then he walked away with blood dripping from his hammer. He's covered in blood.
Wow.
Now, after Marshall Ross, who's an attorney, by the way, calls police, he walks up to the Perelson house. Brave guy, right?
Yeah.
And when he gets inside the house, he finds Debbie and Joel waiting on the first floor. He ushers them out, and then he climbs the stairs to the second floor. He's going to look for Harold. And when he finds him, Harold says to Marshall, quote, "Go on home. Don't bother me," end quote.
Sorry I interrupted you.
Yeah. Then Marshall witnesses Harold walking calmly into his own bathroom and opening the drawers where he kept medication. Now, he's really bloody and he's smearing the blood all over the house with every move he makes. Harold pulls out bottles and boxes of pills and opens them. He tears apart 2 capsules of the barbiturate Nembutal. And this drug is used as a sedative or for the treatment of seizures or to cause patients to fall asleep for surgery. And on the street, it's known as Reds or Redbirds and Yellow Jackets. Nembutal isn't even made anymore. It's called by another name. But he mixes this with tap water in the wash basin. And this is the drug, by the way, that killed Judy Garland and Marilyn Monroe both. Nembutal.
Wow.
And he drinks this down, and then he swallowed 31 small white pills thought to be tranquilizers.
Wow.
Now, I have read that he drank acid. That is not the case. He didn't drink acid. What he drank was this liquid Nembutal, and then on top of it, it was the tranquilizers.
Okay.
Then he turned around and walked back into what I believe is Judy's bedroom. And according to the neighbor, Marshall Ross, he then just laid down on the bed and he waited.
Wow.
15 minutes later, LAPD shows up. First on the scene are officers Anderson and Pazzo. And when they get to Harold, he's in the floor. His head is resting on Judy's blood-stained pillow. And in his hand is still the hammer. Harold is barely breathing. And when the ambulance arrives, he's DOA by the time he makes it to the hospital.
Sure. Yeah. After that much. Yeah.
Police then gathered the pills and the powder that Harold had taken. They laid it all out in his bedroom where his wife Lillian is lying dead in the bed. And on the nightstand next to the bed is a copy of Dante's The Divine Comedy. And just for reference, in case you haven't read this since high school, the plot of The Divine Comedy is a man, most think it's Dante himself, visiting the souls in hell, purgatory, and paradise. And its purpose is to show people the horror that their soul would go through if they do not obey God's laws and live their life righteously. And Harold's copy was open to Canto 1, which reads, quote, "Midway upon the journey of our life, I found myself within a dark forest, for the straightforward pathway has been lost," end quote.
Oh, wow.
That is creepy.
Yeah. Yeah. It pretty much tells you where his head was at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Up his ass.
That too. Yeah, it's true.
I mean, he murdered his wife. He's trying to kill his daughter.
Yeah.
He's mentally ill, obviously mentally ill, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Judy was taken to the hospital and evaluated for a possible skull fracture. She'd been hit in the head with the hammer. She was in shock. She had to witness her mother lying bludgeoned in the bed. The 2 younger children went to live with Lillian's family. And these children, of course, are devastated. And they basically disappear from the world. Because they're going to try to live as normal of a life as possible.
Yeah, of course.
And I also read that they changed their names. Don't know if that's true or not, but whatever they needed to do to move on with their lives, I say bravo to you, do it.
Yeah.
Because nobody deserved the cards they were dealt. And we talk about this a lot. Murderers leave such a wake when they kill, and it's so selfish, and the victims are just never the family of the murdered. It's also the families that are left behind, both sides,
right,
of the murderer.
Right.
And I know this is just one family, but the devastation is huge all the same.
Sure.
Also, the Perelsons had a babysitter for the 2 younger children who lived across the street. She's now a prominent dentist in Beverly Hills. And according to her, on the night that Harold murdered Lillian and attempted to murder Judy, she was having her friend over for a sleepover, and she and her friend could hear Judy scream that night. They could hear her bang on the door of the house before her father answered. And she remembers the next morning when her friend was going home that she opened the door and she could see blood all over the doors and windows where Judy had been banging and bleeding.
Wow.
And she also said that Harold was a mild-mannered man. And in one Hollywood Reporter article that I read, the author hints at the fact that possibly there was more going on between the babysitter's mother and Harold, which is the attorney's wife who came in and found him. It's Peyton Place.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's, yeah.
Yeah, but apparently Dr. Harold really enjoyed her mother's cooking.
It's not all he enjoyed.
Well, I'm like, is that a euphemism for something? What's you cooking?
Yeah,
Is that a euphemism for something?
This is where Harry Wiener comes in. Sorry, that was a cheap joke.
In 1960, about a year later, the Perelsons' home was sold in a probate auction to a Lincoln Heights couple, Emily and Julian Enriquez. And the sale of the house included the furniture and personal belongings of the Perelsons.
Yeah.
And they bought it for $44,750, which was below the appraised price.
Yeah, because nobody wanted it.
No. And these two have a son, Rudy. And you would think that that's where the story ends. You know, this happens. Another couple buys the house, you know, at a probate auction. But this is not where the story ends.
Okay.
So they buy this house in probate. They know that inside there's going to be furniture and personal belongings. But Emily, Julian, and their son, little boy Rudy, never move into the home.
Really?
They never move into the house.
They just bought it and...
They bought it. It's filled with this tragic family's story. And they don't move into the house, and they don't really move any of those things.
Did they ever say why they bought it?
Not really, but they only used the 5,050 square foot home as a storage site.
Wow, that's an expensive storage.
Yeah. And they came from money. Apparently, the wife, Emily, came from a wealthy family.
Okay.
But the couple, according to their neighbors, would bring boxes to the mansion. They would never stay overnight. This family allowed the estate's terraced grounds to be overrun by gophers, overrun with grass. The once beautiful pond was filled with rainwater. Weeds were poking through the cracks in the driveway. The home is slowly but surely dying, for a lack of better words. Now, inside the home is the dust-covered furniture, including a television set from the 1950s. There is Christmas wrapping and apparently a Christmas tree. Remember, he killed his wife on December 6th.
Right.
The inside of the home is like a time capsule.
Okay.
And it's like it's all frozen. And the fact that nobody was living there made it even more creepy. And when Emily Enriquez died in 1994, Rudy, their only son, inherited the home. Now, Rudy at that time was a music store manager who lived not too far away from the house, but he chose not to live in the house. And over the years, Rudy was approached many, many, many times by potential buyers. So don't forget all the list of names of people that I told you who live in this area.
And he worked in a music store?
He did.
And he wouldn't sell the house?
Wouldn't sell the house.
Okay.
But he wasn't living in the house.
Okay. He must have got a pretty decent inheritance then.
But he said, quote, "I don't know that I want to live there or even stay there," end quote. That's what he told the LA Times in 2009.
All right.
And when he's questioned about ghosts inhabiting the home, he simply says, quote, "Tell people to say their prayers every morning and every evening, and they'll be okay."
Well, there you
end
go.
quote.
Okay.
Now, you can't close up a murder house like this.
Yeah.
Never do anything with it. Keep the original furniture in the same places in the house for all these years and not expect to have some people become curious.
Right.
And over the years, neighbors say that they have helped maintain the property by painting a street-side garage. They would tidy up the front yard. They placed a chain across the driveway that leads to the rear of the mansion, giving each nearby resident a key to use its lock.
Okay.
So Rudy's not doing anything, but everybody else is like trying to like prop this house up
Sure.
because
They need to keep their property values.
yes, you got to keep your property value up, right?
Yeah.
But then the city required Rudy to replace the stucco that had peeled from the sides of the house and the front walkway walls and to repaint the place.
Right.
Okay, that's according to the neighbors. But here's what's happening because, you know, he's not living there. The house is a mystery.
Right.
It's an oddity, right?
Sure.
Sex workers were going inside the house. People were bringing guests up there to look at the murder mansion. People were having picnics in the backyard. The house didn't have security or cameras. It merely had this chain across the driveway to keep people out. But after there were people in the backyard and stuff, an alarm system was put on the house.
Okay.
One night, neighbor Sherry Watterson said a friend of hers decided to go up to the house and see what all the fuss was about. And Sherry described it for the LA Times as a, quote, Nancy Drew moment, end quote. I think Sherry is there, but it's her friend who does the breaking and entering, right?
Okay.
So this so-called Nancy Drew sneaks in the back door, and she doesn't get too far because the alarm goes off.
Sure.
And she gets the heck fire out of there, but what she doesn't realize until she leaves is that she's been bitten by a spider. Now, I've read that it was a black widow. I've also read that it was a brown recluse. Regardless, she had to go to the hospital to be treated.
Yeah, they're both painful.
And deadly.
Yeah.
And for the next 2 days after this happens, the alarm keeps going off at Sherry Watterson's home for absolutely no reason.
Really?
And she felt as if a ghost had followed her back to her house. Like, don't come turn on my alarm. I'm going to turn yours on to teach you a lesson.
Yeah. Here, have a spider.
A paranormal radio show host named Dave Schrader was snooping around the house one day when Rudy actually showed up. And he was asking questions, and Rudy said the Perelsons were Jewish, so why would they have a Christmas tree? So one of the things that everybody talks about is that you could look through the window. It's this frozen time capsule. There's a Christmas tree, and there are presents under the tree from 1959.
Wow.
With just dust on everything.
That Mr. Potato Head would be worth a lot of money.
I'm sure if they were real, there would be something. They would be worth something. But what Rudy is saying is, look, there's no Christmas tree in here. And the Perelsons were Jewish, so why would they have a Christmas tree?
Right.
And Rudy tells him that just like his parents, he used the house for storage for belongings, quote, left to him by friends who'd passed away, end quote.
Wow.
And to me, that means the whole house is filled with the possessions of the dead.
Of dead people.
Yeah. So this house over the years has become an internet sensation. And there are all kinds of people who've gone to the house, broken in, taken photos. They all say the same thing, that they feel weird when they're inside it, and they feel like they're being watched. Then in 2012, a blogger named Jennifer Clay became obsessed with the story and the property. She went to the house with her mother and her cousin. There was a no trespassing sign, but of course everybody else had ignored it, so she ignored it too.
Yeah.
She wanted to know what happened, why Dr. Harold wanted to kill this family. So she chronicled it in her blog in the summer of 2012. She took all kinds of photos. She peeled back the section of broken fence and slipped into the property. She took photos through the windows. She saw clothes left out to dry, private letters, books, and in the living room, she saw the fabled Christmas presents. Then in 2016, the son, Rudy, passes away, and the house goes into a probate sale. And the asking price is
$610,000. I don't know.
$2.75 million.
Whoa. Wow.
And somebody buys it for $2.289 million.
They got a deal.
Her name is Lisa Bloom, and Lisa is a high-profile civil rights attorney, Gloria Allred's daughter.
Oh.
So she's an attorney and a legal analyst on TV, and along with her internet entrepreneur husband, Braden Pollock, these two plan to rehab this house and live in this home. But the steep slope that the home is built on turned out to be a huge problem. I didn't say this before, but there are 51 stairs from the road that lead up to this house. 51 stairs.
Yeah.
It really is the house on Haunted Hill, or the haunted house on the hill, right?
Yeah.
So the house is really sitting on a mountain. I mean, it's really steep. And because they were planning renovations that were worth more than 50% of the cost of the house, the home would have to be brought up to present-day building codes. And in order to do that, the house would need to be raised and the land flattened, and then they could rebuild. So basically, instead of buying a house, they bought a house they wanted to renovate. And since they wanted to do more than half of it, they were like, okay, so here's how it goes. You're going to do more than that. Now the whole house has to be brought up to code.
Wow.
So while they were doing all of this, they had basically gutted the house. They had taken it down to studs, to 2x4s. But in 2020, she will sell this house for $2.35 million. This time, it's sold to an LLC that is represented by Lux Manor Custom Home Builders.
Okay.
But it's up for sale again. And it's been on the market for about 3 months. Like right now, this house is up for sale.
Oh, wow.
And it's been on the market for 3 months. And for $5.5 million, the house can be yours.
Wow.
But now it is listed as a $9,000 square foot home, not a 5,000 square foot home.
How'd they do that?
Well, if you look at the listing, it's not the real house. It's a computer-generated image of what the house could be. So I think you're buying the house in its present state, you're buying the property, and you're buying the plans to redo the house.
So they're selling air.
Well, and and it has been on the market for 3 months. It went on the market in July.
Wow.
But let's back up just a second and talk about Harold again,
Okay.
because there's so many unexplained things about him and the house after he's dead. But what about while he was living? Now, we already know he was drowning in debt, right?
Right.
And we've said that he's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs already. But years later, there's proof. All those times he was hospitalized for, quote, cardiac episodes.
Right.
Well, from August 19th, 1958 to August 27th, 1958, Harold was at Temple Hospital on the psych ward. And while he's there, he's been given Thorazine,
Ouch.
which is usually used for schizophrenia or mania. It's an antipsychotic.
Yeah.
And I read in different sources that Harold had made suicide attempts, 3 of them.
Wow.
And it was speculated that wife Jillian was about to admit him to the hospital again in December 1959.
Again.
Wow. So was that it? Or did he just flat out have a psychotic break and murder his wife? Or was he mad thinking she's going to commit him to the hospital, or both?
Yeah.
And he's clearly got a pharmacy of drugs in his bathroom, including the Nimbutal, which was prescribed for sleep. But also, Nimbutal has been used in the euthanasia of animals, and it's used in state executions of criminals.
Oh, wow.
Lethal injection, Nimbutal.
Wow.
So he had all of this. He's prepared. He's ready, right?
Right.
And it's also been brought into question whether or not he would have killed the whole family, or did he spare the younger 2 children? And was it his intent to commit suicide the whole time? And like Judye wrote in her letter to Aunt Gertrude, saying that they were back on the merry-go-round of financial difficulty. So was he saving the whole family from ruin? Like, was he taking them all with him? Sort of like the John List case.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But John List, murdered his family and then walked away. And this guy was probably going to murder his family and then murder himself because he had the weapons to do that.
Sure.
So interesting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, because there's this murder mansion with this weird story behind it and this whole, time capsule inside the home itself, and this is Hollywood, so what do you think has happened? Somebody's optioned the rights to this story.
I was about to say, they've got to make a movie out of it.
Yeah, and they have. And back in 2015, it was in the works. But to date, I haven't found anything online about the new movie. So here's my question. Is this a murder mansion? Absolutely. Harold killed his wife, injured his daughter, devastated his family. It only made it weirder that when the Enriquez family didn't move in and live there like their neighbors, that it became shrouded in even more mystery.
Sure.
But the house at 2475 Glendower Place, Los Feliz, California can be yours, and I'm sure the current owner would be happy to have you take it off their hands.
What do you think, honey?
No, thank you.
Okay, just checking.
But that's the story of the Los Feliz Murder Mansion, and that's all I have to say about that. Hey, Hitched to Homicide listeners. This is Chris Calvert. I love doing research and writing about real crimes, but I also love writing about fictional people who commit horrible atrocities. When you're ready to take a break from true crime for fictional crime, go to chriscalvert.com, where you'll find all my books, including some free ones to get you started. Jane Doe is one badass chick who quietly hunts terrorists in the United States. The Sex and Lies books are all FBI and CIA cases with a little romance on the side. And coming summer 2022, Book 10 in the series, Sex, Lies, and Rock and Roll, releases. You can find all of these books everywhere, and if you like to listen instead of read, you can find them all on Audible. So go grab a free book or take a listen. I love all the characters I've written. I've given them pain, ruined their lives, make them suffer, and maybe even throw in a heroic death. Or maybe they live to fight another day. Check it all out at chriscalvert.com, and thanks for being a listener of Hitched to Homicide.
Wow. Well, I would call that particular episode a realtor's nightmare.
Jeez. Well, I looked it up, and apparently you only have to disclose that somebody died in the home for 3 years.
Really? That's it?
Yes. But I say that, microfilm is free at the library.
Yeah.
And you can go look up your house or who lived there or what the person did who lived there before you if you want more information, just to make sure that nothing hinky went on in there. Or you could have our friend, psychic medium Catherine, walk through your house and tell you if something hinky happened in there. I know she does that for a lot of people. So, yeah.
They need a Carfax for houses.
They do need a Carfax for houses. I mean, listen, when I was looking for a home, the last time I was looking for a home, I walked into a house and I turned around and I walked out and I was like, something bad happened in that house. I don't know what, there's some bad juju.
Yeah.
I'm not interested. Don't care how pretty it is. Moving on. Show me the next house.
Yeah.
I'm not going in. Yeah.
Well, let's get away from the houses and go to a bunch of morons.
Okay.
Cool.
Let's do it.
This is this week's Well, Bless Your Heart. All right, so here we go. Suspected Ohio diamond thieves getaway is foiled by what? A stuck elevator. Kenwood, Ohio. And we know Kenwood because that's right up the road from us in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
A couple of suspected diamond thieves might have gotten away with it if it wasn't for a stuck elevator.
Oops.
Police say Leroy Bridgman, 57, and Marcy Young, 61, tried to steal jewelry from the Diamonds Rock in Kenwood, Ohio. Surveillance video shows a man who investigators say is Bridgman smash through the front door and use a crowbar and screwdriver to unlock a second door. He then looks for the right showcase to break into. Quote, he grabbed what he could, and you can see in the film that he's trying to pull some rings, pendants, things out, and the police are coming. You can tell he's trying to quickly get out of the building, store owner Mike Lane told television station WLWT. Investigators say Bridgman and Young tried to make it to their getaway vehicle by going down a stairwell. But when they realized the stairwell didn't lead there, they hopped into what? The elevator. But that elevator got stuck at the garage level. Investigators say once they realized they were stuck, they tried to stash the jewelry into the ceiling.
I bet they did.
Yeah. They were eventually rescued by the fire department and then arrested. Lane says one of the suspects had been in the store several hours earlier.
He's casing the joint.
Yeah, not too smart because there's surveillance cameras. They kind of recognize you.
So here's how I picture this. Yeah. They've got all of their stuff.
Yeah.
All of their goods, and then they hop into the elevator and the doors close and it's ding ding and the doors close and it's quiet, and then they've got elevator music.
Girl from Ipanema.
They're just like looking around waiting for the to drop.
It's kind of like the scene out of Blues Brothers.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly right. There it is, just hanging out, waiting for it with the elevator music. That's classic, classic. Well, if you have a bless your heart or you know somebody's heart who needs to be blessed.
Like these two.
Exactly like these two. Go to hitchedtohomicide.com. There's a pull-down menu. You can send us a bless your heart, and you can also suggest a case, which we love.
Absolutely.
And you can also join the In-Laws and Outlaws from the website.
Come on down.
Hitched2homicide.com. We'd love to have you come on in and play with us.
Absolutely.
That's all we have this week. That's my husband out there.
And that's my beautiful bride in there.
Join us next time on Hitched to Homicide.
Bye, y'all.